Surrender. Boy, do we talk a lot about surrender. But what does surrendering even really mean? Well, to illustrate that, I would like to tell you the story of how I almost died. Hi, my name is Melody Fletcher, and I teach the law of attraction and the technology of reality creation to highly intellectual people just like you in a way that actually makes some freaking sense. So, when I was about 13, 14 years old, I visited my sister in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is a place that has a lot of outdoor sports, and one of them is whitewater rafting. So we decided to go on a rafting trip. There was a guide. We did not do this on our own. And we all piled into this boat, this inflatable little raft, basically. It was my sister and I, my sister Tina, you guys have met her, and a whole bunch of adults. And for some reason, the guide thought it was a good idea to put a 13-year-old girl on the back corner of this raft. And as I found out later, and as anybody who actually knows anything about rafting, which I did not, that is perhaps a better spot to put an adult and possibly even an adult who actually knows what the hell they're doing. So we're rafting along and we're having a good time. It was a beautiful day, and there were some rapids, but no problems. And there was this one really big rapid, and it's basically a huge rock, and the water just drops over it and then drops down. So there's a big elevation change, and it's sort of like a little mini waterfall. And what happens when the water kind of rolls over a rock like that is it doesn't just drop straight down and then it's all tranquil. What happens is that there is this churning action that happens at the bottom of that rock. And that is really kind of where the danger lies, right? Because the water doesn't just flow, it turns on itself. And this is such a popular spot for things to happen. Oh joy, that they have photographers set up on the side of this big rapid. So I guess it's kind of like going over a roller coaster where when the scary part hits, the photographers take lots of pictures. And what happened is that being on the back corner of the boat and not knowing what I was doing and kind of getting out of rhythm with the rest of the group. So one could say there's a big metaphor of massive resistance there, not being in the flow with the river, not being in sync with the others. Yeah. The photographers, when they took the pictures of our boat going by, you can actually watch me sort of flip right out of the boat, like a little bit more, a little bit more. And in the end, there's just a shoe sticking out of the water. And it's very funny. Unless you were the person who that happened to. Yeah? Because what happened is I fell out of the boat and went over the rapid. And then I got caught in this little churny place. I was wearing a life vest. So I'd taken every precaution, and I hadn't wanted to sit in the back of the boat. I hadn't asked for that. So there's lots and lots of wonderful beliefs coming up there, lots and lots of, resistance, and it was unfair and it wasn't right. And I was too young, and, so many wonderful arguments that we could make why that was wrong and the guide was wrong. And I even dropped some hints to kind of, some breadcrumbs to help along the way to say, oh yes, we can all get very outraged about this. But in the end, what happened is I was caught in the water, and none of those arguments really mattered anymore because I was going to die. And that became clearer and clearer to me as I was fighting a losing battle. Because as anyone who's ever gone up against water, and I have on several occasions in my life, this wasn't the only time I nearly died in water, but that's another story for another day. When you're fighting against water, you can't win. You can't even come close to winning. Water is so powerful, the force is so strong that the human body has no chance against it. And so you're up against kind of an immovable force. I was literally between a rock and an immovable force. And all I was doing was spinning, just, I couldn't tell where up was. I couldn't tell where down was. And the thought occurred to me, I am going to die. And then suddenly, instead of becoming even more terrified, the opposite happened. I actually became very peaceful. And I accepted that this was the situation and there was nothing I could do about it. And even though I was facing what, you could logically call the most terrifying moment of my life, it actually became very, very peaceful, because there's something to accepting the situation that you're in that brings a great deal of peace. And of course, when I relaxed and I surrendered to the water, I surrendered to the situation. I even surrendered to my own death. And, if you've gone through any kind of change in your life, you know that sometimes changes actually feel like death, or the fear of that change can feel like fear of death, because it's the same fear that's getting triggered often. But even as I accepted, as I surrendered to my own death, the energy shifted. And the rapids spat me out about maybe 100 yards down. Or 100 feet down, sorry. About 100 feet down. And I was, of course, very afraid, and the guide was very, very relieved to see me alive, because I think he was starting to get really, really, really frightened when I didn't come up. And I didn't come up, and I didn't come up, and it suddenly wasn't so funny anymore. At the time, I didn't really see the wisdom in all of this. I was just happy to be alive. But looking back, I can, because the metaphor here is, you don't have to be able to read energy to figure this one out. It is all about surrender. Surrendering to our circumstances, surrendering to where we are. That doesn't mean that we don't want things to change. It just means that sometimes you feel like you're in between a rock and an immovable force that is much, much stronger than you are. And as long as you keep fighting, it keeps beating the crap out of you, but you're not going anywhere. So that's when you do the counterintuitive thing, the thing that doesn't feel at all like it should be the thing that you got to do, the thing that scares the crap out of you, which is you do the opposite of fighting. You surrender. You give into it. You say, okay, what happens, happens. I don't really have a choice. I can't keep fighting. I'm running out of strength. The beautiful thing is that you can actually foster this state of surrender before you get the crap kicked out of you. You don't have to get to the point where you don't feel like you have a choice. You can actually step into this state of surrender much, much, much earlier, which, believe me, makes life much, much, much easier. Yeah? So when you are surrendering, you're not saying, I don't want the situation to change. What you're saying is, right now in this moment, fighting isn't working. So I'm going to do the opposite. And I can tell you, oh my gosh, I can tell you, it works. It shifts energy. It opens up energy every time. And if we could just remember to surrender, clarity comes, situations change, and we don't have to let it get to the point where we don't feel like we have a choice, where it's so painful or we're so weakened that there's nothing that we can do. We can actually make the conscious choice to surrender anytime things get hard, anytime things get frustrating, anytime we feel like we're banging our heads against an immovable force. So I hope that this video has been helpful to you. Please leave me a comment down below. This should be a two-way conversation, and let me know what experiences you've had with surrendering, or what you're having a hard time surrendering to. And we'll see if we can spawn another video. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe it on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, because then you'll be the absolute first to get every new video, and YouTube likes us all better. So all right. I will talk to you next week. Until then, smushy, smushy, happy, shiny puppy hugs, and thank you for bringing your light to the world.